I'm in the decluttering spirit, and I'm decluttering 40 eyeshadow palettes. Hello, my gorgeous ones. Welcome to Alicia Budget Beauty. My name is Alicia. Here on my channel, I love all things affordable fashion, beauty. I do hauls, tutorials, reviews, declutters, all sorts of fun stuff. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe, stick around, be a friend. All right, you guys, let's go ahead and get into this because 40 palettes, it'll go way too long. But yes, I'm decluttering 40 from my collection. This is getting easier and easier for me, actually. It used to be really difficult for me to declutter, but I just have a different mentality now. I went from a collector's mentality and also kind of a parasocial relationship with brands where I felt like, oh, if I declutter something, I'm hurting them personally, to a do what's best for me. If it's not bringing me joy, if I'm not using something, if it is cluttering up my life, like I don't have to keep it. So that is my mentality now. I also went from over 500 palettes to now I think I'm somewhere around the 200 or something like that, which makes me really, really happy. 200 is still a lot, but it's not 500. I never want to get up to that number ever, ever, ever again. I am picky about what I keep. So some of these in here may really surprise you. I mean, this is definitely my most cutthroat, and I do have to credit my girl Brittany and also my girl Renita, Colorful Indian and Brittany Ray Beauty, because their declutters recently gave me like the kick in the pants to be like, get tougher about your declutters. So let me go ahead and show you these 40 palettes I'm saying bye-bye to. Okay, I tried to have these organized by brands and somehow they got kind of mixed up. So you may see the brands repeat, but we have Freya by Odin's Eye. This was my very first palette from Odin's Eye I ever picked up. Honestly, I did not use it hardly at all. I think I only used it twice, and that's ridiculous because I probably had this for 2.5, 3 years now. I was so excited. I remember I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting this indie brand, Odin's Eye, my first palette. And then I barely used it. Why? Because I just took in way too much. 2 years ago, I was bringing in anything and everything palettes wise I could get my hands on. I hate that mentality now. And yeah, this just here recently, I was swatching it, playing with it, and I'm like, this is dry. I don't know if it's because it got old. I don't know if it was never that great to begin with, and I was just way too excited and blinded by the light of indie makeup back then. But yeah, I just don't need this palette anymore. All right, next we are going to go into two LA Girl palettes. Now, I said in a recent video of my palette rankings videos, I used two other, the Vacay, Hey Vacay palettes, and I raved about this formula. And I did mention that I was gonna have a couple of declutters and it's more so color story wise. I'm looking at this and I'm about to talk myself into keeping it, but no, Alicia, stay strong. This is a great formula. I do really like these palettes. I'm just trying to be very, very strict on what I'm keeping. And I also have to keep in mind what I do have in my collection that I'd rather keep. So if I have something similar in another formula that I just prefer, I might as well keep that instead. These are not bad at all. They have a great formula, a great affordable formula. For me, I just don't think I'll reach for it that often. If I'm going for earthy, if I'm going for neutrals, I'm probably going into like say my Sydney Grace Heaven on Earth palette, or say like my Alter Ego Wildwood palette, my Yucca palette, some of my Nomad palettes. So that is why I'm letting these go, but they are not bad by any means. Next up, and this is where I'm talking about parasocial relationship. It's something I've definitely had to learn, look at myself and realize I was doing, where a lot of times you hear the saying that brands are not your friends. And it really is true. Some brand owners and you can get very, very friendly. But if you just look at the brand as a whole, a brand is not a person, it's a brand. You shouldn't be so loyal to a brand that you feel like you have to buy everything and that you have to keep everything. So, preface that to say, these are Gourmand Girl palettes. I adore and love Christina, the owner, so much. I love Gourmand Girls. These were old formulas. As a matter of fact, the Exquisite palette, I think was the first or second palette I ever got, like 4 years ago maybe. And I really liked it at the time. I thought it was such a fun, dark color story. I still think this color story is neat for like spooky season, for winter time, but they've improved their formula, or Christina has improved the formula a couple of times, I think, since this palette, and it's just no longer up to par for me. The That Time of the Year palette, she's also really improved the formula since this. I enjoyed it at the time. I think this was the first one I ever got in PR. So I was really holding on to it for that reason. You know, she's never gonna bring this palette back. This was a collab palette with some creators and it's not coming back. So I don't know why I'm keeping it. If I know that the formula's improved, I adore like the Haunted, the Spooked, the Nightshade. I cannot think of the Christmassy one that came out, the blue and neutral one. Anyway, that formula is much better. I'm not reaching for this, so why do I feel the need to keep it? I don't need to, so I'm letting it go, but it was nostalgic for me. Okay, next up, this is another one that I got in PR, and this was really, really cute, and this is going to a special home, which is still my home, but it's going to my daughter's collection. By the way, she's 7. She'll be 8 soon, but she did this video with me. It's the Alice in Wonderland palette from Wet n Wild. We had fun doing this little video together for YouTube. She's been asking, like, when are we gonna do a video together? I like to do them with her when they make sense, and this made sense. This whole collection from Wet n Wild was like, why would I do this by myself? I'm gonna include my daughter. This was a decent palette. Wet n Wild can have a pretty good formula. This one wasn't their best. I was keeping it because I kind of wanted to keep all of their little PR palettes like this that I got, but I should just give it to my daughter. She would love it so much more than me, so I'm letting her have that. And then we have, this is a face/eyeshadow palette from Joma Beauty, Chasing the Sun. Now, there was a time where I adored this palette so much. It's gotten a little old now. It's about 3 years old, and I'm so sad. Joma Beauty completely rebranded. They are a Korean brand. Not everyone knew that. They were the first Korean brand that you would see in a drugstore, but they looked more mainstream drugstore makeup. And I think that's why people didn't know. Now they're kind of leaning into the Korean skincare makeup of it all. So their products are very, very different than they used to be. I loved this palette. I would take it on vacation. I've since not touched it though in the last probably 1.5 years. So that's why I'm letting it go. But it was a good palette. Then we have an Ace Beauté palette, Vintage Dawn. This is set in my collection, and I've tried to convince myself so many times to use this palette, and then I never reach for it. And I do love this color story. I think it's really, really pretty. It's kind of a 70s rainbow palette. That's just what I think of when I look at it. To be honest, if I've used it, I've only used it once. If I haven't, I've swatched it, and it's just kind of, the mattes aren't very smooth. It's not very buttery. And I go back and forth with Ace Beauté. I think they have some pretty decent palette formulas. I've decluttered quite a few, and then some that aren't that great. And I think this might be not that great. I know it's before they reformulated for sure. So even though I like the color story, I just need to let it go. This is another one of those PR palettes I got from Wet n Wild, the Sesame Street palette. Again, it's adorable. This one I actually liked a little bit better than the Alice in Wonderland one, specifically for this shade. Like, I kept this for this shade. It's the Elmo shade, and it is such a bright orange. Like, it would look so good with this dress that I'm wearing. But again, I'm like, girl, give this to your daughter. Why are you being greedy, keeping this palette when she would like it better? So giving that to her. This is an old palette. This is the KKW Mario palette, the artist in Mews. So it's Makeup by Mario, Kim's palette together. This color story I do kind of like. Very muted, very mid-toned. Kind of reminds me like deserty vibes, but I mean, this brand has been what, gone for 2 years, 2.5 years? It's not coming back. I never reach for it. I just don't need it. But I think those color stories back in the day, KKW, I think the only one I kept was a camo palette. Now I think I've decluttered 4 or so. All right, then we have a couple of Nomad. This is the most parasocial example of them all. Nomad was the first indie brand that really took notice of me. Nomad and Gourmand Girls. And I wanted to own every single palette. And I own every single larger palette except for the one that they had to discontinue for some controversial reasons back in the day. And other than that, I bought every single, like, one of these sizes. If I didn't get in PR, I bought them all because I wanted to have the full collection. I just don't care anymore. I still love Nomad. Why? Like, I don't have a museum, you know, like a makeup museum. Like, why? Nobody cares. Like, no one's gonna think I'm cool if I say I have every palette. I never use these two. I might as well let them go. So we have the Toscana and we have the Lago di Como palette. So like Como, fun color story. I just don't see myself using it because if I'm gonna do these colors, I'm gonna use the Sydney Grace Heaven on Earth palette. Look, it's almost exact tones and I love that palette. And then we have the Toscana. It's just a neutral. I have other Nomad neutrals I like better. So I don't need these. Then we have a Juvia's Place. I keep decluttering a lot of Juvia's and it's not because I don't love the formula, because I do. However, what they've done in the last year or so, the Candy Shop palette, the Afrogalactic palette, those are amazing. And they went from having a really good formula to like an amazing formula. And if the color story, if it's just something I don't use a whole lot, this really matches me, by the way, then why? You know, these are those big pan sizes. I do love this peachy shade. Actually, this one is tempting me to keep just for these alone for a face palette. Don't forget to use your eyeshadows as face products because I love like a mustard blush and this is a perfect little blush trio right here. I'm gonna let it go because I have a yellow blush, but I don't use it for the eyes ever. All right, let me show you a couple of small ones here because I didn't count these in my 40, just these little ones. And we have the Clean CoverGirl. This is Cool Berry. I got this not that long ago in my Walmart subscription. This isn't bad. I got a pretty look. If I'm gonna use these tones, I'm gonna probably use Natasha Denona, I Need a Nude, or I'm gonna use my Sydney Grace Unveiled palette, something like that, that has a better formula than this CoverGirl. I just don't need it, but it wasn't terrible. I like testing it out. We have this little quad from Perfusion, and honestly, this quality is great. This is just, I'm not gonna use all these colors together ever, so that's why I'm letting it go. Then same thing, almost the same colors in this little LA Girl. These are really good, actually. LA Colors, I keep confusing them. LA Colors is what this is. I remember I got this for $1.25 about 2 years ago from Dollar Tree. Performed amazing, but I don't need to keep it around. And then we have this little bitty quad from Shades by Sean, Life of the Party. This came in Ipsy. Not terrible quality. I really like this shimmer shade. Again, I have other palettes I'm always going to reach for before this with these colors. We have a BH Cosmetics. I've been kind of kind of how ColourPop, I'm down to 3 palettes only when I used to have maybe like 12. I'm starting to kind of whittle away some at my BH Cosmetics because some of them are getting old. We know that they're RIP, pretty much RIP. But this is the Peridot palette August, which was my birthstone. I do like this color story. I really, really do. I enjoyed my looks from this. I liked the Peridot shade in here. It does have a pressed glitter, and I don't mind pressed glitter sometimes, but this one's not that great. And I just don't see myself really ever using this. Like this kind of gives me a little bit of Wildwood, Alter Ego and Yucca vibes, and I would reach for that over this. We have a Dose of Colors, Sassy Siennas. Now, I did use 2 Dose of Colors palettes that are the same format. The green, I can't think of what they're called right now, but the green one, it's like an army green, and then a neutral one with some shimmers on the eyes today, because I wanted to see, I'm like, do I want to keep them? Yes, I do, because this quality is so good. This is an all matte, and honestly, between those other 2 palettes I just mentioned, those are the same almost mattes that are in here. So even though these mattes are really good, they are really, really good. Dose of Colors has a good formula. I just don't see myself reaching for this all matte 5-pan, but the quality is there. We have another one of those little Nomad I'm letting go. It's a little fort. This is so light. These 2 shades here are probably not really hardly even show up on me. So, but cute packaging for sure. All right, we have 2 more Odin's Eye. If you would have told me even a year ago, I would be decluttering some Odin's Eye, some Nomad, some Gourmand Girls, I would have been like, you're crazy. I just have a totally different mentality now. Plus, I still love makeup, but my passion is perfume and fragrance right now. So I don't feel as attached to makeup. So it's easier to let it go. But we have the Erd palette. I like this color story. It's moody, kind of grungy, but I don't think the quality is here with these little 5-pans here. Here's the other one. This is the Verandy palette. There's also just a lot of wasted space. I don't know. These are little bitty pans. I do kind of like this middle. Like, I think it reminds me of my Fenty Beauty highlighter that's like this, that I need to use more. But yeah, letting them go. Let it go, let it go. All right, we have the big palette, and this is a Be Perfect Dream Big Manifest palette. I remember, I think it was my girl, Caitlin House Makeup. I think she tried this out and wasn't that impressed and let it go a long time ago. And I remember going, I really like that palette. I'm so offended. I don't know. Like, I guess my taste has caught up now, and I tried this recently and I was like, yeah, this is not that great. I used to think it was back in the day, but the quality is just not really there with this. Plus it's huge. I do not need this. At one point I thought I was so cool for having this, not anymore. Then we have the Mora Electric Nights Eye and Face Palette. Honestly, this palette's good. It is really good. I'm kind of thinking now, if I start, I did do a girl's makeup for her boyfriend's prom not too long ago, and she wants me to do makeup for her prom. This would not be bad to keep as a palette to do other people's makeup now that I'm looking at it, because it's really not bad. I just personally never use it, but I could really picture this working on some other people. So I might keep it now for that, but for myself, I'm counting it as a declutter. All right, now we have a couple of Chic Glam palettes, and I've mentioned these before. These are these astrological ones, or the zodiac ones, are the only ones that I've kept out of all my Chic Glam. I've decluttered now all the rest. So I've probably decluttered 15 Chic Glam palettes. I have some more of these that I'm not ready to get rid of yet. The quality is excellent on these. That's why I did keep them. However, these color stories just don't speak to me as much. So that's why I'm letting them go, even though the quality really is there and they're super, super cheap. So this is the Tenacious Taurus palette. And then this is the Adventurous Aries palette. This is probably one I gravitate towards more than this one, color story wise. But don't talk yourself into keeping them. Just get them out of my face. Okay, we have the Octius Luna palette, and this was by Octius Luna's Cosmetics. I really did like this palette. This was a little bitty brand. I got this in PR over a year, maybe 2 years ago now. I think it's been 2 years. I think that's why I'm letting this go. her website's still up, but she hasn't put anything out. This was her debut and she's done nothing since. It was this, some makeup brushes, and a couple of lipsticks. So because of that, for me, because I have such a large collection and I do like to share what I'm wearing in case someone wants to purchase it, I like this. I like this color story. I really liked these mustards. Nothing wrong with the formula. I just don't really know if I can recommend the brand anymore because I don't know if it truly exists. So that's why I'm letting it go, but it wasn't bad. I do think the packaging and the theming was really cute. All right, we have a bunch of IBY. Well, not a bunch, a few. I think I got another one down there. We'll come across it. Here it is. No. Okay, I'll get it in a minute. IBY Cosmetics. Not a bad actually a really good formula, really affordable. It's just, let me show you. Okay, so we've got the Poolside palette. Anytime I used these, I did like my looks. We have the Enlighten palette. This one does have a busted shade, so I have to be careful. Very, very cool toned, very cool tone. And then we have the Ocean Awakening palette. This was probably my favorite out of all of them. This shade right here, this green, gold, so pretty. And then here recently in my rankings, I did have this Wonderland palette and kind of told you guys, spoiler alert, I will be decluttering this. So here's the Wonderland palette. These are good. They're really good. In someone's collection that doesn't have as many palettes, doesn't have as many indie brands and things like that, they would be super, super pleased to have these. Just for me, in my collection, I'm parting ways, but they are not bad at all. I just want to say that. All right, we have the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette. Woo! Also in a recent palette ranking. And I just said, I think this just kind of got a little old maybe, or maybe it was always this way. And since Huda's improved the formula, this is a fairly old palette. I should probably have, you know, pans on this for the amount of time I've had it. But that speaks to I've got too much and why I'm letting things go. I do like this color story. I just think the formula is really dated, like almost like an old school drugstore formula, and much better now with other palettes like Rose Quartz. We have these two by Tarte. In the recent video of the looks ranking, I had Gilded in there. This one, the neutral one. And then here is a Glamour palette. So I mentioned in that other video that I adore this packaging. It's so sleek and sophisticated, looks expensive, does show fingerprints. I do love these color stories for like every day. It's just the formula is okay to good. And I don't need okay to good anymore, but I think some people who don't have a lot of makeup, this, like, I'm not sure who this is going to yet that I know, but I think they will be very, very pleased. Okay, I've got to preface this again with Parasocial and getting things in PR and feeling like you have to keep them. So these are Alter Ego palettes. Now, these are not all the Alter Ego palettes that I have. I am not decluttering ever, I don't think, my Wildwood palette because I love it and I think it's so good. Their best formula that they have. I think I'm keeping 2 or 3 Alter Ego palettes. These all four, I think I got in PR. And I did do a video on, I think, 2 or 3 of these. So if you did purchase these from watching my video and you love it, that's what it's for. It's to show you how things go on, how they blend. I always give my honest opinion. I've said, you know, like the pastel one is a more recent one. I mentioned in that video that some people really like a super, super light formula that they have to build up and they don't want pigment right away. That I prefer a little bit more pigment, but I could see this being for certain people. And that's still true. For me, I have some other pastel palettes that I just are quicker for me. I don't have to work so hard to build it up. I got beautiful looks from this. There's nothing wrong with it, just for my taste. That's why I'm letting it go. And I used to think I had to keep everything I got in PR, especially if I showed it on my channel. I don't have to. You know, if you bought it and you like it, that's awesome. I don't dislike this palette. It just doesn't make sense within my collection to keep it. Then we have the Sakura palette, and I've thought about decluttering this a couple of times, and I talk myself out every time because I always love my looks. So why am I getting rid of it? It's just, I don't know, for me, it doesn't excite me looks wise necessarily. Like I want a little bit more depth, even though this looks gorgeous on. I just keep talking myself into keeping it, and I'm trying not to do that anymore. We have the Harmony palette, and this one was decent, not the best of their formulas. I do like some of their other ones better. The Sahara is another neutral palette. I like the color story of this. I just have some other palettes that are similar to this that I prefer the formula a little bit more. However, if you are super budget girl and you don't like to pay more than say $25 for a palette, and you never will, these are amazing. These are amazing. For me, I've got to be stricter about my collection. So that's why I'm letting these go. Okay, we have the Pacifica palette. This is the, what is this called? Cosmic Reflect. This actually used to swatch a lot better and look a little bit more metallic on the eyes. I've had it for 3 years maybe, and I'm just letting it go because it's not terrible. I just never really think to use it. If I'm gonna go for something metallic-y, I'm gonna use just other, like Nomad's new formula with their shimmers are very metallic, more shiny. So this wasn't terrible. This is a hemp formula. Someone else might like this better than me. We have the Wine palette from Glamlight, and actually Renita, Color from Indian, is who kind of inspired me to let this go. I never touch it. I think I've used it once. I think the color story is really pretty. I think I just like I still really like, you know, my Michaela palette. I like my Ice Cream Dream palette. Those have purples in there that I could get this look from, or I could go into like my Blend Bunnies palettes. So she inspired me to let that go. This one I've hung on to for nostalgic reasons. The Pure, y'all remember that brand? Barbie palette. I always loved this packaging. I used to want this palette so bad, and when I found it at TJ Maxx a few years ago, I was so excited. The formula's just like, meh. I'm just kept it for the packaging. That's so silly. Again, I don't have a museum. Nobody's coming to tour my pretty packages, so I don't need it. This is the other Alter Ego palette. Same thing, Midsummer. This is another one that is just I love my looks with it. They always look really, really pretty. It's just not something that I get a lot of joy out of the color story. That's why I'm letting it go. The very last palette we have here is a pretty recent Ipsy, the Violet Voss Pretty in Paradise palette. I did say, I was like, you mean Too Faced? Because it looks so much like a Too Faced palette. And I just don't really like the Violet Voss palette or formula. I didn't even touch this. I wanted to keep it intact so it'd be new for someone else. It just doesn't live up to my standard of formulas. So that is it, you guys. 40 palettes saying bye-bye to. I hope maybe I inspired some of you guys, because I know I was inspired by others. Maybe I inspired you to really look at your collection and say, it's getting out of control, or, you know, just you want to have what you love that makes you excited to use only. So I hope that inspires you. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, have fun shopping or decluttering. Yeah, that's it. Bye.